Hello, friends. Welcome aboard the Round Trip Stories podcast, where we share stories of moving around the world and back again, reflecting on the lessons we've learned along the way. My name is Tracy.
And my name is Melissa, and we are so glad you're joining us for today's episode. Our guest today is Pafoua Her Pistoresi, a Hmong American travel blogger, mom of one, and ministry leader. She studied to be an ESL teacher and got her first job teaching in a Christian international school in Wuhan, China. These are her stories of her adjustment to Chinese culture, love of the international and local people, and beginning of her growing worldview and exploration. Hear how she became brave in the midst of double adjustments, the stress of being a first-year teacher and settling into a new culture and place. So buckle your seatbelts and make sure your tray tables and seats are in their upright positions as part one of Pafoua's round trip story gets ready for takeoff.
Welcome, Pafoua Her Pistoresi, to the Round Trip Stories podcast. We're so grateful that you made the time today during your son's nap to meet with us and share your stories with us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to just talk about past experiences and traveling, one of my big passions.
Pafoua and I have known each other for a couple of years, right? I think
Yes.
I met you in 2014. Do you think that's
Yes.
when it was? And we worked at the same school, international school in Wuhan. So
Yes.
It's such a pleasure to be able to hear the other specific stories. So many I don't know.
Yes. And also to be so close together in physical location now as well. After being over there. Now we're here in the same state.
So as we get started with listening to your stories, Pafoua, tell us first a little bit about yourself and your family now, and including your family and where you grew up.
Yeah, definitely. I was born and raised in Colorado, and I have 4 siblings. There's 5 of us, and I'm Hmong. And so at 18, I wanted to go away from home, and so I decided to apply to a school in Indiana. I went to Indiana Wesleyan University in Marion, and spent 4 years there. That was my first time, like, just having my eyes open to the broader world, because I didn't even know where Indiana was on the map, so that was really cool. And then from there, I went into education, and then my student teaching, I decided I wanted to go overseas. So that was my first experience going overseas. And so I came back home and just had the passion and the calling to go overseas. And that's when I decided to apply to go to China and got hired for Wuhan and started teaching there. So yeah, now I am back in the United States and I'm married now. We got married in 2020 and we have one son. His name is Enzo and he's turning 2 next month in November.
I'm just curious, as one of 5 kids, were you one of the younger kids or were you one of the older ones?
I am the oldest, yes. I'm the oldest of 5 and my parents came from Laos and Thailand, so I'm first generation. And we really didn't know what we were doing when I went off to college. Just kind of like trial and error. So my youngest sister, we're 12 years apart. And so she graduated. She didn't want to go out of state. She stayed at Colorado State University. And it was a lot easier for her, the college experience.
Yeah, being a first generation college student is really... It's a big deal. And to be the oldest and moving out, it's neat that your parents let you leave and that you didn't feel like you needed to stay home. I mean, who knows how many stories there are related to that.
Yes. Well, my dad was all for it. My mom was a little bit more hesitant, but I think my dad talked her into it.
So when you moved to Wuhan, tell us a little bit more about what you did there and how long you were there.
So I got hired with LDI. I got hired in 2014 and then I left in 2018. I was there for 4 years. Yeah, it was my first adult teaching experience. So with my education degree, I was licensed for K through 12, but I was mainly at WIS. I was mainly kindergarten through 6th grade doing ESL.
Okay, you've used a couple acronyms. So can you explain those? LDI
Yes.
and then WYIS.
Yes, LDI is Leadership Development International, and that's the name of the company. I believe they've rebranded now.
Yeah, now they're Life Plus.
Life Plus, yes. So that's the company that hired me. And then WIS is the international school that I was at, Wuhan Yangtze International School.
I'm assuming there are people that have no idea who the Hmong people are. So is there a way to explain sort of briefly?
Yes. No, there is. I think I've gotten very good at a very succinct explanation.
The elevator pitch.
Yeah, so the Hmong people, it's spelled Hmong, and we do not have a country, so we are just a people group, and originated from the mountainous areas of China, and then also the mountainous areas of Thailand and Southeast Asia, Laos as well. Because we don't have a country to call our own, we lived under that governing state. Now, today, there are many Hmong people everywhere, a lot in North America, especially California and Minnesota. And then there's also some in France and Australia as well, so that's really cool. The Hmong people in China specifically are called the Miaozu, and that means rice stealers, so the Chinese people actually don't like the Hmong people.
Wait, did you say rice dealers or rice stealers?
Rice stealers.
Okay.
Yes. So it's a very derogatory name. And the cool part is that in China, there's so many different dialects. Like here in America, people are probably more familiar with green and white, refers to the dialect of a language. Whereas in China, there's so many more. There's like black and striped and blue, and it just refers to the dialect. And so I can understand some of them, but not all.
Well, let's talk about how it went when you moved to China, to Wuhan. Tell us a story about your initial transition and adjustment, please.
Yeah, I definitely experienced culture shock. And I didn't think I was going to, because I thought, oh, I'm Asian. I'm going into an Asian country. There shouldn't be that much different. But I was so shocked because I've never seen so many Asian faces. And not only that, but the culture was different as well. And I remember we get picked up from the airport and all. And our host, she kind of walked us through our neighborhood. And we got to this area called the Walking Street. It's part of a neighborhood, Taihe Walking Street. And I just saw a mom carrying her baby. The baby was probably, 6 months old? And she like squatted probably just a few paces from us, and the baby peed on the street. And I was just thinking, okay, this is a completely new culture, and I don't know. Just culture shock from all of that.
Yeah, that's definitely a good landing story. And what about the preparation that you received before you moved to China, and then how that affected your adjustment?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think that was so helpful. I don't know if other companies do this or not, but LDI set aside 2 weeks for all of their new hires to go to New York to have a training. It's called PFO, and I don't really know what it stands for. But it was nice because we got to meet all the new hires. We got to meet our school principals. So I think that preparation was really nice, because then once we did land in China, and we see our coworkers, it's like, oh, I know that face. You're familiar to me, and I'm not completely by myself.
Yeah, I appreciate the training that some companies give before their clientele goes overseas. What about you have some stories about you and your roommates?
Yeah, that was a part of like the culture shock that I was experiencing. So me and my roommate met there, and they took us out, do shopping and all of that. But we wanted to go back out and explore Wuhan by ourselves. So we took ourselves to IKEA and bought little end tables because we wanted to add something to our house. I can't remember what the size is, but it's big enough that I had to like hold it in front of me with my 2 hands. And we were trying to get back on the bus, and there was no line. Like, no line for the bus. It was just a group of people hovering in front of the doors of the bus. And so we were both carrying each of us an end table, and she is small, but she is more assertive than I am. So she was like pushing her way through the crowd to get inside the bus. And I was just remember thinking, okay, I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to be left behind and she's going to be on the bus by herself, and we'll be separated. So, yeah, I was just shocked that there was no lines. There was no sense of order, it seemed, to getting on the buses and all of that.
And then you also said that you grew up in Asian culture. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Why it was so different, or what the differences were?
It wasn't the same at all, because, I mean, some things were similar. We ate rice, you know, the food was very similar. The language sounded similar, but was still not the same. But I think the main thing is that growing up in America, you have American ideals, right? Like just habits, American habits, and things that we value here. Whereas over there, even though we might look the same, our intentions are different, our motivations are different, and just everything, is different. I mean, I understood, because in China, like, they had the grandparents watching the kids, right? And the parents went to work. So I understood that. That's what happened in my household. And the food that we ate, it was, you know, we went to the farms and killed the animals and brought them home. And so I get that. But just the stuff you learn in American schools is different from the stuff you would be learning in Chinese schools. And if you get, 12 years of that, it's just how your mind is formed.
So what about something that was hard, Pafoua, as you, as part of your time abroad?
The hard parts, culture shock was hard, but I think maybe because I had a little bit of background being Asian, that kind of helped me settle in a little bit better. I think the hardest part was that not only was I experiencing culture shock and meeting new people, but it was a completely new job as well. And I think that was the hard part because this was my first adult teaching professional experience, and I didn't know how to make a lesson plan that wasn't hypothetical, right? This is actually teaching to kids who knew zero English. And here in America, you have Spanish speakers, but it's similar enough to English to where you can kind of like figure it out. Whereas I had Korean students, Japanese students, I don't know those languages. How am I going to teach to them? And then also like, what is it called? Pacing guides, like the year overview. I just didn't have the full experience doing that. So yeah, it was hard trying to grow into who I was as a teacher.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I mean, yes, I knew we were teachers in the same school, but I guess I underestimated combining the experience, or the combined effects of being a first year new teacher and having to adjust to your first year abroad. That's a lot of stress and a lot of learning.
Yes. And I think, the great part about that was that we landed in a school that had strengths in hospitality. So like the housing, the living, all of that was taken care of. I didn't have to worry about that. And then also the principal at the time, I don't know if he was intentional in this or whatever, but I think it was smart that he hired a lot of new teachers. So a lot of us were coming in with a new experience as well. So we were able to form groups and talk to each other and bounce ideas off of each other. I also was able to relate to some of the people on my floor that this is their whole new experience as well. So,
Yeah, you have that camaraderie.
Do you think that it's a good idea for people who don't have any teaching experience to just go ahead and go for it? Because, your first year of teaching is notorious for being extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And there's not really any way around it.
I think if you have the calling to go overseas, and if you adaptability, right? I think that's the big name of the game, right? If you're able to go with the flow, go with the changes, because it's a transitional community. I think no matter where you go internationally, people are coming in, going out, 2-year contracts, 1-year contracts. So if you're able to handle all of that, and have the calling to go overseas. And also, I think what helped me a lot is doing part of my student teaching overseas abroad so that I knew what I was going into. And I had the forethought to do that. So I think that helped because then I understood, okay, this is what my life would look like overseas. And then I would say, yes, go.
The thing too, because once you get a teaching job in the US, then you're like, no, I need to stay, especially in California, you have to do your first 2-year induction. And then then your 5 years go by and you start your family. But I have to say that, Melissa, you and I both were already teachers, and then we started families, and then we went overseas. So that's possible too. And, and all
that is true.
Yeah. So, and the cool thing about international schools is that they pay for your kids to go to the same school. And those schools are not cheap, right? They're private schools, at least $15,000 a year. And they're usually really good schools. The class sizes are small. Usually you have a lot of people who are all professionals. So all those parents are professionals. They're very serious about their kids' education. They're very supportive, maybe a little too demanding for some people's taste, and that's who your kids are going to be around, those kids.
So it's a different type. It's just going to be a very different experience than at a, local public school in pick a random
Fresno.
City in, whether it's, Fresno or anywhere at least in the US or.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many different things to think about.
But yeah, I agree with you, Pafoua. If people are even thinking about teaching overseas, go. And and you talk about that on your website, which we'll share too. Well, moving on, tell us about something you loved about living overseas.
There's so much to love, right? Being overseas. I absolutely love the people, the coworkers, just great to work with. I loved the food, the travel, all of that. But I think at the heart of it, my mission was to go and share the gospel. And I didn't even know what I was thinking that was going to look like at the time. But one of the stories that I wanted to share was at our school, we had WIS teachers and students and all of that. But Wuhan is also the educational hub, one of the educational hubs of China. And our school was near a university, Zhangda University, and there they also had some American teachers that went with another company and taught there to university students. And so we kind of partnered up with them from time to time. One of the liaisons in our school got us connected to them, the teachers at the Zhangda University. And so they were like, well, does anyone want to host parties, like Christmas parties, Easter parties? And, us being new teachers are like, yeah, we'll do all the things. And so me and my roommate, we volunteered to host an Easter party. And at this time, our liaison, he was like, it should just be, a small party. You don't have to do very much. The teachers at the university are going to do it all. They're going to run the program and all of this. So I was like, yeah, we're just opening up our house. I could host. Well, come to find out, he invited his students, right? But they also went to Chinese church, and they invited some of their friends. So I was expecting 30 people showing up at my house. 60 people showed up that night to our tiny little Chinese apartment. And I just remembered our whole hallway was filled with shoes. And we ordered food from a local place called Aloha, which served foreign Western food. So there was hamburgers and fries and all of this other stuff. And I was just thinking, we're not going to have enough food. But somehow everybody fit. They were sitting on top of each other in our living room, and we had food left over. So it's just, I think God's faithfulness just shows up over and over again. So many similar stories of me being at an English club, just volunteering there. And I don't know, just God shows up in places where you maybe don't expect or don't think that he would.
Right. Or where that your resources have run out and it's absolutely not your own doing that has made it work.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Like particularly in China, it's not just that you're meeting Chinese people, you're also meeting people from all over the world. And especially China is just like attracts people from all over the world, whether it's business or like you mentioned, Wuhan has the most university students in all of China. And we're talking people from Pakistan, people from all over Africa. There's a huge African community. And so you get to meet Chinese people and make Chinese friends, but then you also get to meet people from all over the world and and influence and learn and share. Well, tell us a story about something that surprised you.
I was actually really surprised at how quickly I picked up the language. I didn't think it was possible. Yeah, so I do speak Hmong because I'm the oldest in my family. My grandma was home with us a lot, and I say a lot, but she babysat us pretty much the whole day. And even through kindergarten, I remember coming home from school and my grandma would pinch me and my brother if we did not speak Hmong in the house. So if we were speaking English and she didn't understand us, she wants to know what we're saying, so she would pinch us. And so that kind of forced me and my brother to speak Hmong in the house. And so I knew I'm familiar with tonal languages. Even when I went to Thailand, I am familiar with that language. And so I knew a lot of the words. And Chinese is also tonal. But honestly, before China, right, whenever I heard Chinese, it was like that stereotypical, like, cling, clang kind of sound to me because I just didn't understand the words and how the tones worked.
Sure.
But when we sat down, the school was so great. They provided us with Chinese teachers, so we would go on our off hour and go learn some Chinese. The syntax was similar to Hmong. Hmong has 7 tones, Chinese Mandarin has 4. And so when we actually started sitting down and I actually like listened and, started learning the words, it was very familiar. And I remember one of the first experiences being in Wuhan, we went out with one of the few teachers. They took us out before school even started. And they were all foreign looking, right? And here I was the only Asian in the group. And the waitress would come and she would look to me to give the order, but because they've been there for 10 plus years, they knew the language and they were giving out the orders. And so they would like say an order, a dish, and I'd just be like, yeah, because the waitress was looking at me. And so I just had to learn very quickly. I learned the language within about 3 months of being there. Now I could communicate.
That's amazing. That is awesome.
It was so fast.
Yeah.
I could communicate, order what I want, get in a taxi, tell them where to take me. But if I was like ever lost and I asked questions, I can ask the questions, but the comprehension wasn't fully there yet.
So then they're assuming that you know Chinese fluently and they're like, da da da. And you're like, wait.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering how if what that was like being Asian, if people would look at you and assume that you spoke Chinese. And I would assume that not every Asian person is going to go to China and be viewed as somebody where they would assume that they would speak Chinese.
Right. You know what the interesting thing though is I think the Chinese people, they just see me, right, and expect that I'm Chinese. And I think because their worldview is maybe smaller. I remember sitting in a taxi and because I looked Asian, because I picked up the language so quickly, I would take the front seat so I could direct the taxi driver where to take us. And most of the time we would make small conversation and I would tell them about my family, that I'm American. And he's like, no, you're not American, you're Chinese. And I'd be like, no, I was born in America. And he's like, well, are your parents Chinese? And I would be like, no, they're not Chinese. They are in America. And so I think they just didn't understand that. Yes.
Well, and I love how you were opening that taxi driver's worldview.
Yes.
And everybody else you met. That's great.
Yes. Happened a lot.
So Pafoua, we always like to end our first half of our interview by reflecting on the things that we've learned or that our guests have learned living abroad, because we know that it's always a learning experience. So can you tell us a little bit about what you learned about yourself as a result of your time living abroad?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned about me was that I was learning how to be brave, right? It's a whole new experience. You're moving from what you know, who you know, to completely unknown. Like, you don't know if you're going to get kicked out of the country. You don't know if you're going to do well in your job. You don't know if you're going to make friends. You don't even know if you're going to like the food or even be able to use the bathrooms. And so it's just a whole new experience. And I think maybe because I didn't have a family and I was just accountable to myself, I was like, I can take care of myself. I can be independent. And that's why I felt brave enough to go. My mom, like I said, she was the naysayer. And I think maybe as a mom, and now I get it, right? Now that I have my own son, I get it. I'm like, oh, I just want to hold him close. I don't want him to go too far or, get himself hurt anywhere. And I think that's probably where my mom was coming from, because she did say no a lot when I told her I wanted to go overseas. But yeah, I think being there, I learned, or I discovered Brene Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she wrote a few books, sociologist, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, but she did say, like, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is fear. And when you think about, as a believer, right, if you love God's people and you want to go out and you want to serve God, you have to be brave and overcome the fear to be able to love his people. And so I just had to learn how to continuously say the courageous yes, right? I'm going to go out in faith and not fear.
So what would you say that you learned about the world as a result of your time living in Wuhan?
Yeah, it's so nice just having a global perspective. You see so many people, you see their culture, their worldview, and you start to love them, right? You love the people. And so the biggest thing I learned is that, like, the people isn't the government. And this was something I learned coming back, actually, because here, America is so focused on politics. Like, it's a huge controversial topic. Like, families break up over politics. In saying that as well, I don't know how many Americans have a positive worldview of China because of their government, right? It's a communist government. And maybe a lot of people don't actually know what that looks like day to day, but they hear the theory and the, all of that and have their own opinions on it. But once you love the people, it's like, well, the government, you could hate the government but love the people, if that makes sense.
It does. Yes. No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a difference between how we can feel about a country's government and politicians and leaders and whatever, and just the people, the citizens.
We, as citizens of our country, we love our country, but we don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on. We don't necessarily support certain politicians.
Right.
And it's the same everywhere, right? People definitely have lots of different opinions about their leadership.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And the leadership of other countries, too.
Thank you, Pafoua, for sharing your round-trip stories from China. The combination of being a new teacher and adjusting to a new culture made the first year challenging, but you had fast friends and colleagues to support you. You were grateful to learn Mandarin faster than you thought because of your fluency in the Hmong language, but quickly understood that even though you are Asian, you were very different from your Chinese friends and colleagues. Along with learning to love and care for those friends despite the differences, you also took many opportunities to choose to be brave. So, what happened when Pafoua returned to the U.S.? You'll have to make a return trip to our podcast for part 2 of Pafoua's round-trip story.
Want the podcast equivalent of early boarding and first-class seating? Be sure to subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your fellow globe-trotting friends? We would love to encourage them too. We believe that sharing stories helps our understanding of the world grow larger while the distance between us grows smaller.
As this episode lands, we hope these stories have encouraged you, helped you find some more of your belongings, and made your baggage a little lighter. Thanks so much for listening, friends. We'll see you next time.